At 1 a.m., on a quiet November night in 2016, a family in Loxahatchee, Florida, awoke to a sound that would haunt them forever. Screams, footsteps, the echo of a voice crying out for help. In a matter of minutes, a warm, peaceful home turned into a crime scene. A mother, her boyfriend, and a close friend, all standing helplessly. As a 21-year-old young man took his final breath in his own bedroom, that young man was James Berry. And what happened inside that small house on Glasgow Drive would leave investigators, friends, and the entire community in disbelief. Our hearts go out to the family of James Berry, who continue to endure the pain of losing someone so kind, so full of life, to such a senseless act. This is True Crime Diaries, where we delve deep into the most chilling and complex criminal cases, bringing you the untold stories behind the headlines. Join us as we uncover the facts, the twists, and the shocking truths behind some of the darkest moments in history. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Let us know your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. When deputies arrived, the scene was pure chaos. Inside the modest Florida home, 3 adults waited outside under the glare of flashing lights. Nicola Berry, James's mother, pale and shaking. Guy Hand, her longtime boyfriend, his clothes smeared with blood, and Jeff Jarspikowski, James's best friend, trembling, his eyes hollow.
And then he saw her out there and texted her telling her to go away. She saw your car, she pulled in here, just backed up, and she went that way. She didn't get out of the car unless someone was driving her. How does she know how to get through the unlocked door when there is no key?
Here, talk to Jeff.
And then 2 nights ago, she came in over here again, and then James heard and thought someone was trying to break in, and then he saw her when he looked out the window, and then he texted her saying, "Go away or we're done. We're over. Go away. This is disrespectful."
So why didn't he tell me that?
He just told me today, like right before I fell asleep.
Tell me that. Jesus.
God.
I have a psycho living in expectation.
She's always been fucking psycho. Always.
She killed him. Because this lady was talking.
Do y'all want her address?
We'll have detectives coming out. They'll talk to you when they get here, okay?
And if she stole a key, she would know if she took a key off the key ring. She wouldn't have time to put that key back on the key ring, would she? Is she that fucking smart? You know what? That would actually make perfect sense. Because I remember waking up. I'm not sure what time it was, but it was probably like 11 or 12.
So he must have come out here, and she has a knife ready.
Yeah, she come in the front door.
Yeah, that's why the front door
that
was
actually
open.
makes perfect sense.
Inside, first responders found James lying on his bed, barely clinging to life. Guy was pressing on his chest, desperate, counting compressions. "Come on, James. Come on." But when the medics took over, it was already too late. James Berry was gone. He had been stabbed multiple times, the fatal wounds piercing deep into his chest. The weapon, a carving knife with a white handle and a curved blade, lay abandoned on the kitchen counter, still wet with blood that a trail of red led down the hallway toward the bedroom, a silent witness to the horror that had unfolded only minutes before. As the paramedics packed up their gear and detectives moved in, a chilling question filled the cold night air. Who had done this and why? In the early hours, the surviving trio sat outside under a neighbor's porch light, wrapped in blankets, trying to process what had just happened. The story that began to take shape was both shocking and heartbreakingly familiar. Someone they all believed had broken into the house in the dead of night. Someone who knew James. Someone who had loved him once. That name came quickly. Melanie Eam, James's 19-year-old ex-girlfriend. Jeff, still shaking, told deputies he'd seen James texting Melanie earlier that night. They'd been arguing again. Another fight in what had become a constant, exhausting cycle. They'd broken up before, but this time, James seemed serious. He wanted out. Melanie came by around 8, Jeff recalled, but James told her to leave. She was upset, crying. I thought that was the end of it. But was it? Guyhan swore every door was locked that night. The front door, the side door, the patio, everything. Yet somehow someone got in. There were no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, no broken locks. Only the back door wide open. Guy speculated maybe she'd stolen a key. Maybe she found another way in. But to him, one thing was certain. She had come back. Detectives inside the house moved methodically, taking photos, bagging evidence, following that crimson path from kitchen to bedroom. The blood trail told its own story. A struggle that started near the kitchen, where the knife drawer had been left half open. The blade used to kill James came from that very drawer. Guy recognized it instantly. It was one of his. He'd used it just hours earlier to carve the family's roast for dinner. So what had turned a quiet suburban night into a scene of unimaginable violence? To understand, investigators had to go back to before the screams, before the heartbreak, to when James Barry and Melanie Eam were just 2 teenagers in love. James had met Melanie in high school. He was the kind of boy everyone liked. Kind, funny, easygoing. Melanie was shy, almost soft-spoken, but smart and warm once you got to know her. They bonded over gaming, long conversations, and late-night laughter. Soon, they were inseparable, the type of couple that seemed destined to last. James's mother, Nicola, welcomed Melanie into the family like a daughter. She would bake cookies at their house, join them for dinner, and even spend holidays there. But love, especially young love, can sometimes become all-consuming. And theirs did. When James went to college, Melanie followed. They studied at the same school, spent nearly every day together. But beneath the smiles, something darker was growing. Jealousy, insecurity, and emotional dependency that neither of them could control. By late 2016, the relationship had turned volatile. They'd break up, then make up again. Each time, the emotions ran deeper. Each time, the stakes felt higher. And on that November night, it all came to an end. But what really happened inside that house? Did Melanie break in? Or was there something else? Something more complicated, lurking behind the closed doors of that Florida home. The investigation that followed would uncover lies, contradictions, and a confession that no one saw coming. The hours before James Barry's death were ordinary. Dinner had been quiet. The house on Glasgow Drive was still. His mother, Nicola, washed dishes while her boyfriend Guyhan watched TV. James and his best friend, Jeff Jarspakowski, played video games in his room, laughing, shouting the way 21-year-olds do when life feels endless. No one knew those sounds would be the last joy that home would ever hold. By midnight, Guy had locked every door. He'd done it 1,000 times before. Then silence, broken only by the soft drone of the ceiling fan. Outside, the neighborhood slept. Somewhere in the darkness, a door creaked open, a shadow crossed the kitchen, a drawer slid out, metal clinked against metal, and in that moment, everything changed. Minutes later, Jeff heard the sound that froze his blood. His friend's voice, panicked, cracking through the quiet. "Jeff, get out. Please, get out." He ran toward the hallway. When he burst into James's room, chaos met him. Overturned blankets, muffled gasps, blood blooming through a t-shirt. James was on the floor, clutching his chest. "Call 911, he rasped. Jeff screamed for help. Nicola woke first, disoriented. Then Guy, sluggish from half a Valium, stumbling through the dark, that he followed the trail of blood down the hall and fell to his knees beside James, that he started CPR. Compress, breathe, compress. The rhythm of desperation. But the light in James's eyes was already fading. When deputies arrived, the house looked untouched. No shattered locks, no footprints on the wet grass. Inside, though, the story was written in red, drops across the tile, smeared on the door frame, leading to the bed where James lay still. The weapon sat waiting on the counter. A carving knife with a white handle and a curved 10-inch blade. Guy whispered, "That's mine." He had used it only hours earlier to carve dinner. Detectives sealed the scene. Flashbulbs snapped. Evidence bags rustled, and outside, under the flashing blue lights, Nicola held her face in her hands, whispering her son's name over and over. Before the sun even rose, a theory began to form. It spread among them like wildfire. Too fast, too easy, Melanie Eam. James's 19-year-old girlfriend. Or maybe ex-girlfriend. If you're captivated by this true crime story and want to know more about cases like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and join our community of crime enthusiasts. Do you think Melanie acted alone? Or was someone else involved? Tell us in the comments. Jeff told detectives they'd been fighting online that night. He'd seen the messages. Short, sharp exchanges full of hurt and finality.
And then he saw her out there and texted her telling her to go away. She saw your car and she pulled in here and she backed up and she went that way. She didn't get out of the car unless someone was driving her. How does she know how to get through the unlocked door when there is no key?
Talk to Jeff.
And then 2 nights ago, she came in over here again, and then James heard and thought someone was trying to break in, and then he saw her when he looked out the window, and then he texted her saying, "Go away or we're done. We're over. Go away. This is disrespectful."
So why didn't he tell me that?
He just told me today, like right before I fell asleep.
Tell me that. Jesus.
God.
I have a psycho living expectation.
She's always been fucking psycho. Always.
James had finally decided to end things. He wrote, "It might be better for us to split and just focus on ourselves." To Melanie, that message felt like betrayal. She replied, "I thought you were happy with me." But James didn't back down. He told her he wasn't happy anymore, that it was over. After that, silence. Or so he thought. Sometime after midnight, neighbors remembered seeing headlights pause in front of the Berry home. A small Toyota Corolla idled for a moment. Then the engine cut. No one heard the door open. No one heard the footsteps cross the tile. But someone did. When detectives later examined the kitchen, they saw no signs of forced entry. The back door stood slightly ajar, as though it had never quite latched. Inside the open drawer, the missing knife. Everything pointed to one possibility. The killer didn't break in. They knew the house. They'd been there many times before. By the next morning, police were already looking for Melanie Eam. She wasn't at home. Her parents, confused and terrified, said they hadn't seen her since the night before. Her phone was off. Her car gone. When investigators pulled traffic camera footage, they saw the Corolla's plates flashing under streetlights, moving steadily north. She was headed out of Florida, fast. Across hundreds of miles, that small gray car carried the answer to a mystery that had shattered a family. By the time police caught up, it was parked outside a quiet home in Maryland.
So right now, all it is like I said, we got a call to check the welfare of guests is Melanie's here. So they just said, hey, some stuff happened. Pretty much family got concerned. They just wanted us to come and make sure she's fine, like in the right state of mind and everything like that. So is it cool if she comes out and talks to us real briefly? Like I said, we just need to make sure everything is fine with her emotionally.
Hey, I don't talk, but maybe you can see her. I'll just let her come over here.
Is it cool if we go in? Like I said, it's just to make sure physically she's fine is all. That's it. Or if she doesn't want us to come in, if she comes to come out.
I'll just have her come to the door.
Okay,
cool.
That works. Hey, do what you got to do, Monk. I appreciate it.
Inside, officers found Melanie. She didn't look surprised, if anything. She looked relieved, as if she'd been waiting for them. They told her they only wanted to talk. She wasn't under arrest, they said. Just a conversation.
Hi, Melanie.
We got called to make sure that you were okay. We got some people concerned about you. You missed work or something. So,
400, I'm direct. I'm going to head that way till I hear further.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was all. We just made a check.
So we'll come back and knock on your door, Monk, and give you all the information. You have any questions for us, Melanie?
I'm just wondering, when should I go in for the questioning?
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, we haven't been told anything. Like I said, they just wanted us to talk to you about, make sure physically and emotionally you were fine is all. Okay? You have any other questions for us? What's going on, Melanie?
I don't know, I'm just scared.
Okay. What are you scared about?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll be right back. If you have any further questions for us, like I said, we'll be back to knock on the door. If anything comes up in between that time, please don't hesitate to ask us, or let us know what's going on. Okay?
Thank you.
And there, in that living room, with a whimpering dog in the background, she began to speak. She said she'd gone to James's house that night just to talk. He was breaking up with her, but she didn't believe it. She thought he still loved her. Then she admitted something that chilled the detectives. She said she had taken the knife from the kitchen drawer. She knew exactly where it was kept, and before she ran from the house, she tossed it aside, somewhere in the room. She said she didn't think he was hurt that badly. She thought he'd be okay. She thought he'd get up, but James Barry would never get up again.
Would I be provided with the lawyer and stuff if I say anything?
Are you going to be? We're not going to provide you with one. You're just going to come to the station and talk to me.
We're just going to talk to you. We're going to bring you right back. You're not under arrest.
Mama Shirley said they wanted to speak in person.
Okay.
So I went over there. I wanted to speak with him.
What put you over the edge, you think? Just because he broke your heart, I'm guessing.
I really felt like it was going to stop.
When you used the knife on him, was your intention just to kind of scare him? Or you didn't want to kill him, did you? Just tell me that you didn't want to kill him.
No, I didn't mean to. When I went off, I thought he would be okay.
Basically, everything shows that you just drove over there with the intention of killing James, which is really bad. But if it's something like either that moment, passion, you were trying to defend yourself, this is your opportunity, because you're not going to get another opportunity, most likely. This is your opportunity right now.
When Melanie fled Florida, she stopped only once, at a Walmart, to buy a new phone. She left the old one behind, lying somewhere inside the house where the man she loved had died. Her words weren't shouted. They were calm, almost detached. But behind every word, detectives heard the same thing, a confession. Still, what they didn't know was that this confession would become the center of a courtroom storm. One that would divide families, question evidence, and twist the truth in ways no one expected. Because in this case, nothing was as simple as it seemed. Detective Oliver pressed record that he wasn't in an interrogation room, just a quiet Maryland living room, a barking dog in the distance, and a teenage girl sitting on the couch. Her name was Melanie Eam, and she was calm, too calm. She looked at the detective and said softly, "I just wanted to talk to him. I didn't think it would go that far." She described walking into the kitchen, opening the drawer, and taking the knife she already knew was there. She described the moment, the fear, the shouting, then running, driving through the night, the endless highway between Florida and Maryland blurring into silence. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for a lawyer. And when Detective Oliver asked if she understood what she was saying, she nodded. What she didn't know was that her words, that quiet, trembling confession, would become the most contested piece of evidence in the entire case. By the time she was flown back to Florida, the story had become headline news, a 19-year-old girl accused of killing her boyfriend in his sleep. The community wanted answers. The family wanted justice. But from the beginning, something about the case felt divided, unclear. Her lawyer, Bruce Lear, came out swinging that he insisted that Melanie's so-called confession was nothing more than a guided statement. that Detective Oliver had planted the story in her head, leading her to agree with his words rather than tell her own.
I'm saying that my client gave an alleged confession in violation of her constitutional rights and therefore should be suppressed.
Lear filed a motion to have the confession thrown out. He argued that Melanie wasn't read her rights, that she was young, frightened, and manipulated. She wasn't under arrest, the detective countered. She was free to leave. But who really feels free to leave when police officers have just driven across state lines to find you? The motion failed. The confession stayed in. And so the trial began. The prosecution's story was simple, painfully simple. A breakup, a jealous rage, a knife from the kitchen. A young man dead, stabbed in his own home. They painted Melanie as the scorned girlfriend who couldn't take no for an answer, who drove across town in the middle of the night to make sure that if she couldn't have James, no one would. But the defense had other plans. From the moment they stood before the jury, they turned the story upside down. Melanie didn't kill James Barry, Lear declared. She witnessed someone else do it. Someone else. Someone inside the house.
The evidence will show that Guy Hand, for some reason, took a Valium that night before he went to bed. It will show that he picked up the bloody knife, well aware, and he'll admit he was aware that that knife had been used to kill this young man. He picks it up, and he takes it to the kitchen and leaves it next to the sink. That's as far as he got at that point with it. Destroyed the evidence. His background? He was a butcher. And of everyone who was in the house at that time, the mother of the deceased, the best friend of the deceased, and Guy Hand is the one who's saying, she did it, she did it, she did it. Right from the start. Your common sense will tell you who inflicted those mortal wounds. Melanie Eam was so horribly frightened by seeing the stabbing of her boyfriend right in front of her eyes by someone. And she got in her car and she drove like a bat out of hell and went to a family member in Maryland.
The defense pointed a finger at Guy Hand, Nicola's boyfriend, the man who claimed to have found James, who said he performed CPR, who moved the knife from the bedroom to the kitchen. It was his knife, after all. He was the last adult to see James alive. And he'd admitted to washing his hands before police took photos. To the defense, that wasn't shock, that was guilt. In court, Guy Hand took the stand. He looked tired, haunted. He told the jury about that night, how he'd taken half a Valium to help him sleep, how Nicola wore earplugs, how they were both startled awake by Jeff's screams.
911, something, it was startled.
And at that point, is it loud enough that you wake up?
Oh, yes.
At that point in time, are you still in bed when you hear the noise?
Yes.
Is Nicola still in bed at the time that you're hearing this noise?
Yes.
What do you do once you hear the noise?
Jump out of it. I see Jeff. He's screaming, dial 911 or help or something. And I see James sitting on the floor kind of up against the bed.
And you say sitting. Is he in a proper seated position?
You know, kind of slumped.
Now, at this point, so even though it wasn't helping, did you continue to try to help James?
Yes.
Was there a point where you could see that James, that he lost you?
I watched the light come out of his eyes.
Did you have any reason to harm Mr. James there?
Oh, I love you.
Did you, on the morning of November 17, 2016, did you stab and kill him?
No, I did not.
I do not have any further questions.
He said he ran down the hall, saw James bleeding, and dropped to his knees. He tried to save him. He thought moving him onto the bed would make it easier to do CPR. The prosecutor asked, "Why did you pick up the knife, Mr. Hand?" He swallowed hard. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I just picked it up." He claimed he carried it to the kitchen, dropped it on the counter, nothing more. But the defense pounced. Lear asked, "Did you wipe it clean, Mr. Hand? Did you use that towel we see in the crime scene photo?" Guy shook his head, eyes glassy. "No."
So you were outside, about to be questioned by the police. You had already moved the murder weapon, and you now decided to wash your hands, correct? The murder scene, at the request of the police, carrying a butcher knife.
I wasn't carrying it like that, no.
Were you carrying it?
Yes. I picked up the knife with these 3 fingers, and walked it down the hall and laid it on the counter by the trash can, just so no one would kick it and cut their toes.
Train does it on the bed. Nicola Berry wearing earplugs. And he locked all the doors before he went to sleep. These are facts you cannot just ignore. You can't just ignore that with, what did the ME's medical examiner say? 8 slices, 10 slices, double blood vessels? Where's the blood if the occupant of this sweater is the one who did it?
Then came another question, the one that made the courtroom go still. If you're trained in CPR, why would you put him on a soft bed instead of a hard floor? Guy stared down at his hands. "Because I was in shock," he said quietly. "Because I wanted to save him." The prosecution followed with their own witnesses. Nicola, trembling on the stand, saying she woke up to Jeff screaming, that she saw Guy run to help, that she saw him grab the knife later, but never clean it. Jeff, tearful, confirmed the same. He said he didn't see Melanie attack his friend. Only heard James shout his name, warning him to get out. And then silence. As the trial unfolded, the jury watched footage of Melanie's confession. Her flat voice, her nervous hands. Some believed her words were real. Others saw a scared girl echoing what she was told. The defense argued the physical evidence made no sense. The knife's blade was bent, something they claimed a 90-pound girl couldn't have done. They said the attack required strength, rage, control, traits that didn't fit Melanie. But the state had something stronger, her own words. She had told Detective Oliver she stabbed him. When asked how many times, she'd said, "It's not like I was counting." By the time both sides rested, the courtroom felt drained.
More than once? She says yes. That's what she says on the tape. And ladies and gentlemen, because she's not counting how many times she stabs him, does not negate her guilt, doesn't negate her intent. If you actually listen to what she said, it's not like I was counting how many times it actually hit. She is just continuously trying to stab him. Not even paying attention if it hits, just going at it again and again. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the act of second-degree murder. Because at that time, she has so much hatred for him. She has so much hatred for him. And a depraved mind at the time that she's acting like this.
Nicholas stared at the floor. Guy kept his hands folded in his lap, and Melanie sat perfectly still, her face unreadable, her eyes far away. The jury began deliberating. Hours passed, then more. Finally, they sent a note to the judge. They couldn't agree. Not about guilt, but about how guilty she was. For believed she was guilty of second-degree murder. An intentional killing. Point 2 believed it was manslaughter. Reckless, tragic, but not planned. The judge had no choice. He declared a mistrial. the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because when the retrial came, the defense would double down, the prosecution would sharpen its case, and the truth, whatever it was, would finally come out. When the first trial collapsed, everyone thought that might be the end. A hung jury, a broken case, too many doubts. But prosecutors weren't ready to walk away, and neither was James Berry's family. They had waited 2 long years for answers. They weren't leaving without them. And so, in January 2019, the case of State of Florida versus Melanie Eam returned to court. This time, both sides knew exactly what they were up against. The defense came armed with the same theory. Melanie hadn't killed James. She had seen someone else do it. They painted a vivid picture of Guy Hand as the true culprit, a man who knew how to handle knives, who owned the one used in the murder, who had access, strength, and opportunity. They called him unstable. They said he'd taken Valium that night, that he might have lost control, and when it was done, he covered it up, turning suspicion toward the teenage girl he already knew would look guilty. But the state had learned from its mistakes. They came back stronger, steadier, armed with logic, science, and one haunting recording. Melanie's own voice. "I took the knife," she had said. "I threw it somewhere. I didn't think he was that hurt." They reminded the jury that she didn't just describe the weapon. She described the drawer it came from. The same drawer where Guy kept his carving knives. How would she have known that, unless she was the one who pulled it open? The state also emphasized the trail of blood found on her shirt cuff, on her car's gear shift, on her hands. Not imagined, not planted, tested, proven. And then there was the detail that had haunted detectives from the beginning. The bent knife. The defense argued that only a grown man could bend a blade that way, that Melanie, barely 90 pounds, couldn't have driven it in with such force. But the prosecution countered with evidence that told a darker truth. The blade wasn't bent by power. It was bent because it hit bone. That kind of damage didn't take strength, it took proximity, desperation, and rage. As the second trial unfolded, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. Gone was the open sympathy for Melanie. The narrative of the shy, misunderstood girl that in its place stood something heavier. The image of a teenager who had crossed a line she could never return from. Witness after witness took the stand again. Nicola Berry, fighting tears, described the horror of finding her son. Jeff relived the moment he heard James's final words. Guy Hand faced the defense's questions once more, his voice cracking as he said, "I didn't kill him. I tried to save him." The jury listened quietly, pen still, eyes fixed. When the time came for the verdict, the air in the courtroom was heavy enough to break. Melanie sat between her attorneys, motionless. She didn't cry. She didn't blink. Her parents sat behind her, hands clasped, whispering prayers that no one could hear. The foreperson rose. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Melanie Eam, guilty of second-degree murder." There was no gasp, no shouting, only silence. A silence.
We find the jury finds us all. We find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as contained in the information.
And so deep it felt like the air had left the room. Melanie didn't move. She stared straight ahead, her face expressionless. Across the aisle, Nicola Berry began to shake. She leaned into her daughter Alexandra and sobbed. Quiet, exhausted sobs that carried 7 years of waiting and wondering. James was finally at rest at least. That's what she wanted to believe. At sentencing, something unexpected happened. The defense brought forward a forensic psychologist who claimed Melanie had been a victim of long-term physical and sexual abuse at the hands of her mother. For the first time, the court heard about trauma, neglect, and fear that might have shaped her life long before she met James Berry. But there were no records, no police reports, no proof, only her word and a cousin's. The prosecutor reminded the judge that tragedy doesn't excuse murder, that every life has pain, but not every pain ends in blood. Judge Glenn Kelly listened in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but heavy. "This case is devastating," he said. "There are no winners here, only loss." He considered life in prison. But he weighed her youth, 19 years old, her lack of criminal history, and the court's duty to balance justice with mercy. Finally, he spoke the number point 50 years. Melanie Eam would be over 70 when she walked free. As bailiffs led her away, she turned her head once, not toward the family she destroyed, but toward the courtroom wall ahead, and oh, tears. No apology. Just the blank stare of a girl whose choices had trapped her in time. And for Nicola Berry, that was the hardest part. Because no matter the sentence, nothing would bring her son back. A young life ended in the dark, another locked behind bars, and a family left to carry the silence that followed. The courtroom is empty now. The cameras are gone. But for the people who lived this story, time never really moved on. In the quiet of her Florida home, Nicola Berry still keeps her son's gaming headset on a shelf beside his photo, the last thing he ever touched. She says she can still hear his laugh sometimes when the house is still. It's not the sound of ghosts, she says. It's memory refusing to let go. For Guy Hand, every clang of metal in the kitchen pulls him back to that night. The same drawer, the same knife, the same impossible question. What if I had woken up sooner? And for Melanie Eam, time has stopped entirely.
Get life in this case, our gut feeling, but we are so pleased in terms of the 50 years that Judge Kelly handed down to Melanie Eam, because that is a lifetime. And she gets to think of what she did every single day when she wakes up inside those walls of the jail. You miss every single piece of him every single day. There's not a second that goes by that you're not thinking about his future, what he had, his potential, going to college, working, him having children down the road, and just everything in life is gone, has been taken away. That's the hardest part.
Do you want to say anything, Mom?
He was a good soul. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. He loved life. He loved his family. He loved his friends. He was very loyal. He loved animals. He was just incredible.
Inside a state prison cell, she marks birthdays on the wall. 21, 25, now almost 30.50 years feels like forever when you're counting the days alone. Her name will fade from headlines long before her sentence ends, but this story, still divides anyone who hears it. Because when love turns violent, when heartbreak turns deadly, the question that haunts every true crime case isn't just who did it. It's how did it get this far? How does affection twist into obsession? How does silence become a scream? James Berry never lived to answer those questions. But maybe his story reminds us to listen, to the people we love, to the warning signs we ignore, to the quiet moments that could change everything. If this story moved you, let us know. Do you believe justice was served? Or do you think there's more to what happened that night in Loxahatchee? Comment your thoughts below. We read everyone. And if you want to hear more true crime stories, hit the subscribe button and join us each week as we uncover more cases that prove real life is far more chilling than fiction. For now, we say goodnight to James Berry. A son, a friend, a gamer, a young man whose life was cut short, but whose story still echoes through every mother's worst fear. May he rest in peace. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and always look a little deeper. This is True Crime Diaries, where every story has a pulse.